Welcome to the John Harrison Podcast. Statistics show us that about 70% of people are disengaged in the workplace. Obviously, that affects bottom lines of companies, individual, their own engagement at work, but also affects families and communities. We don't want to just be frustrated about things that are going on in the workplace or the world. We want to do something about it. So we're going to talk about this while others aren't, and we hope you will join us on this journey.
Welcome to the John Harrison Podcast. This is Madeline Baker, and we've got John here today and Melissa. We're so happy to have John back. I feel like the last few episodes, John, you've been traveling, so we're glad that you're here. Today we're going to be talking about a concept that we've been talking about called read the room. And this is similar to discernment, but a little more specific. I think this is a good topic to talk about because a lot of people walk into a room and they don't really assess how everyone else is feeling. And sometimes people just start speaking and don't necessarily look and see like, oh, there may be some tension here. And this, of course, ties into communicating with excellence and knowing your people. So we just wanted to kind of dive into this topic today and talk about what that looks like and maybe even the difference between reading the room and making assumptions. So, John, I'll kick it to you first.
Okay, thanks, Madeline. And I think it's interesting. There are certain phrases we use with human beings that they're kind of vague, but we kind of know what they mean. So high maintenance is one, right? You go, no, this person is high maintenance. And it could be your brother-in-law, your aunt, or it could be your supervisor or a peer at work. And then, man, this person does not know how to read the room. We just feel like in our little team, we've been hearing this a lot, even in our sessions, or just one-on-one conversations. And like Madeline said, they're coming in literally maybe into a room and they don't sense what's going on. And it could go both ways. It could be a tension-filled room, like Madeline said, and someone comes in, hey, let me show you this funny video on my phone. And it's like, not now. This is not the right time. Or it could be the other way where everybody's kind of, it's lighthearted. It could be a lunch table and people are joking and laughing, and someone comes in and shares some really bad news right in the middle of the table. Yeah. And so a lot of these things, even the high maintenance stuff, when we said that, I don't know that people are always aware. We've talked about being self-aware. Mm-hmm. But the read the room thing, I think, is really critical because it can drain water bottles really fast. And it also paints that person in a bad light, which isn't fair to that person either because we're judging them based on one thing they said or did. So we do feel like this is one of those work culture things that we don't think about. We always think about pay and benefits are the things that keep water in people's bottles, but we all know that's part of it. But it's this kind of stuff that just drains people throughout the day. So that's why we want to talk about it, just to get you aware of it. And even obviously those of you that are listening to kind of look in the mirror a little bit and go, hey, I wonder if I don't read the room sometimes when I'm at a family gathering or even coming home from work, I think about, right? Like, let's say you're coming home to somebody and they're in a good mood, they've had a good day, and you just walk in and just, kind of vomit all over them with everything that went wrong at work. That may not be reading the room to let that person go first. So it's little things like that. But Melissa, obviously you've seen this in the home life, work life, whatever. But what comes to mind when you hear about reading the room or not reading the room?
Yeah, I think there's a strong overlap with discernment. We've talked about that in the 7 characteristics of a star. And so, with that, it comes like there's a lot of nonverbal that comes into play, I guess, from my perspective with reading the room and discernment. And sometimes, like facial expressions, things people are not saying or not doing. So if there's like a really quiet person in the room and trying to pay attention to how engaged they are in the conversation, and do I need to give them an opportunity to say something? It could be a product of their personality type. It could also be they're just not extremely knowledgeable on the topic being discussed. There's all kinds of things that could play into that. But then also, as far as like nonverbal cues, right? Our face tends to leak out sometimes what we're really thinking or, what we're feeling. And we don't even know that that's happening. So someone across the room might be reading your face, right? And it's a different message perhaps of what's coming out of your mouth or what is not being said, or maybe you have a real passion about something that is being talked about in the room and you're not really saying it, but your face might be saying it.
It's interesting you say that, because I had an employee and we would be on like a teleconference, so not Zoom, but just, and someone from corporate was sharing something, and I would see her face. There's 10 people around the table. Someone says something from corporate, and she would kind of roll her eyes. Well, of course, now everybody's going, why is she rolling her eye? What's she upset about? What they just say that irritated her, whatever it was. And I had to talk to her about that, because I said, it's not, and frankly, maybe I was irritated by the thing too. But I said, as soon as you do that, to Melissa said, that body language, everyone's turning to you, perhaps. This happens in our sessions when I'm teaching in front of the room. Excuse me, I'll make a comment or statement, and I can look and see if someone maybe doesn't agree or they want more clarification. And I'll do that in a kind way, but I'll go, now, Joe, you seem like you're not tracking with me. And he might say, oh, no, I'm tracking. I just, I was thinking about something else, whatever. Or they go, well, but I was thinking blah, blah, blah. So I think, again, in meetings, even to notice if you throw out something and people seem confused, irritated, to not call them out in a terrible way, but just say, no, Melissa, I feel like you're struggling with something I just said. Mm-hmm. And she might go, well, just a little. It's that kind of thing too. So again, around the dinner table, same concept, right? You can tell one of your children is not participating with the conversation, could be teenagers, whatever, and they're drifting, and just saying, are you okay? Everything okay? And that's all. I think sometimes, especially I'd say extroverted people, lions and otters are more likely to kind of steamroll through a conversation sometimes, because they're the talkers, they're the bold ones, and they're not picking up on other people's emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think read the room too comes into play real strongly, like in one-on-one situations, even in training and development, or if you're mentoring or someone's shadowing someone else trying to learn a new job or learn something new relative to their job. An example I have is anytime I've started something new, in particular a new job, I had this one person that was training me on something, and as she's training, I'm very intently looking at her, like maybe almost with a little bit of a scowl, and listening, trying to pick up on all the pieces I need to pick up. And I could see the reflection of what was on my face on her face. Mm-hmm. And so I asked her about it. I was like, so the facial expressions you're making, I said, are you mimicking what I'm doing? She goes, actually probably, yeah, to some degree, because she said, I want to make sure that you're understanding, but there's also a sense of question and maybe intent, or not intense, what's the word I'm looking for? Tense study, from you on your face. And I just want to make sure you're getting it. And I'm going, well, that's exactly what it is. I'm really wanting to understand where you're coming from and all the details around it. But then, conversely, on the other side, if I had a question or you could see a question formulating, I have a tendency to kind of raise one eyebrow, like, I have a question. And she kind of called that out too. So I think from a one-on-one and training perspective, just paying attention to what is happening between those two people in that discussion or that smaller room is very important, because it could affect the transfer of information. Mm-hmm.
Well, Madeline, you said this is a combination of communicate with excellence, know your people. So if this is, for those of you that are supervisors or even just peers, to know your people around you and going, now if Joe makes that face, that's probably blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So that's really helpful.
I would say too, some people, you talked about the assumption or the, stereotype of lions and otters like steamrolling people. I also feel like on the flip side, golden retrievers and beavers, who are typically more introverted, could also maybe come off as too standoffish or just not, and maybe some people just have that face where they just are not as smiley as others. And so that's hard for me whenever I'm in conversation with those people, because I want them to be smiling back at me in the conversation. And if that's not happening, that can be tough. And so that's where I think you have to, John, you mentioned asking pointed questions, or just not making assumptions, but like going ahead and asking a few questions to like discern if this is really, are they upset, or is this just how they act?
Yeah, that's a great combination of what Melissa just said and you said, Madeline, like asking. Mm-hmm. Are you frustrated right now? Are you confused? Are you getting this? I just want to make sure we're good.
Yes.
And even in the training example. But
and it doesn't have to be awkward. You can be like, oh, I just wanted to make sure. Like,
I'm just checking.
Yeah.
Just checking if you're, And I think so Melissa, a lot of Melissa's time is spent maybe with existing clients, but certainly potential new clients. And we call them table conversations, because she may actually sit across at a coffee shop and talk to somebody. It could be on Zoom, whatever. And that requires reading the room. Mm-hmm. And Melissa, you do a great job of that, because, and I'll let you expand on this a little bit, but some people, you can tell pretty quickly they want numbers. How much does this training cost, and how long is it, and when do you do it, and where do you do it, and they want the facts. Mm-hmm. Other people, that's not what they're interested in right now.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of I don't mean this to sound conceited in any way, but there is a sense of a little bit of a gift with that, in that, understanding people and the differences, and realizing that, not everyone is the same, and you have to be able to be in tune with the person that's across the table. That's not something I've always been able to do well, because of, industries that I was in and backgrounds that I had, and just the sheer nature of the businesses and industries sometimes. But with that, some of them want a summary, like you said, the numbers, quick information, how long does it take, how many days, that kind of thing. And then others really want to have a conversation about what the VIP way is and how it might impact. So then you get into this casual back and forthness of some of the challenges that are happening in their business, and how some of what we do might be helpful to that. Mm-hmm. And it's just really listening to what they're saying. And I probably do a lot less talking than the other person across the table. But it's because I'm trying to truly understand what some of their issues are. And a lot of times I have 30 minutes to do that. Yes. Sometimes I have an hour to do that. But typically I have to gauge that conversation relative to the time available, and then determine, okay, do I have follow-up I need to do? And what is the follow-up that I need to do relative to the 45 minutes we just spent on the phone? Not to repeat myself in that follow-up communication. So yeah, it's just real interesting, because everybody I come in contact with is very different, and their needs are very different.
Yeah, I think it is a gift, but I think it is something that can be practiced and learned. And that's why some people get really irritated with salespeople, because they come in, same tactic every time, and some people get turned off by a salesperson in 30 seconds. Oh, yeah. And they'll just go, yeah, no thanks, I'm not interested. Or they'll sit there for 30 minutes to be nice, yes. But they turn their brain off at 28 minutes or 2 minutes in, and they're just coasting the last 28. So for us, because we are not an organization that pushes, we don't do cold calls, we do none of that. we really want to understand what people are thinking and feeling.
Well, context is everything, and I think that's really what reading the room is about. I mean, if you don't have the context of what the discussion taking place in the room is, you're going to have a hard time maybe even participating or offering up something of value. Yeah. So if you're not picking up, or you can't insert yourself in the conversation, maybe somebody needs to hit the pause button in the room and say, can you give me some context about, how we got here? Or, what was the previous meeting about? And, not assuming that you've missed every meeting, but you understand what I'm saying. If you're coming into a discussion that you really just don't have the context,
get us all on the same page.
Yeah. How do we get there? And I think asking that question is very relevant.
It really comes down to slowing down. I mean, and we're all busy, but taking, and it doesn't have to be 30 minutes of like listening and not saying anything. It's just, taking a moment to be like, okay, how's everybody feeling? What are they already talking about, depending on the situation and the room you're walking into? But just realizing that maybe you don't have all the answers right off the bat and taking a moment.
And maybe even all the stakeholders that are impacted are not sitting in the room either. And that has to be taken into perspective.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this to our team, but we went to see our daughter out in Connecticut and her husband a couple weeks ago. And we stayed at a hotel, and they had valet parking. So we went to get our car, and I asked the person at the front desk, I said, now, do you have a way that we can tip the valet, without cash? And the young lady at the desk, I don't know about that. Let me ask our manager. And they came over and they said they didn't. And I told Jen when we got in the car, I said, to me, just what Melissa said, like stakeholders reading the room. So I stay in a bunch of hotels now. In a lot of hotels, there's a QR code now in the room if you want to tip your housekeeper if they did something extra. You can do it by QR code. Obviously, most people are not paying their hotel bills with cash, any of these things. But this was a reasonably nice hotel, and I'm like, now these valet drivers, it's only cash. And all kinds of people don't have cash today. So to me, that's reading the room, going, you know what, if we're going to have people that clean rooms and are bartenders or waitresses or whatever, we got to think about our valet guys who are running down the street getting cars all day. And they had no way other than cash for those people. And that just hit me as
overlooked
a little bit, which is because we think of reading the room as we started this conversation with somebody that comes in and says something inappropriate or they're loud or something. And we go, that person didn't read the room. But I love that you just said that, Melissa, like culturally in your workplace, are you reading the room? I've seen meetings where some high-level person gets up and talks about bonuses or their big vacation they went on or something. And I'm like, a lot of people can't afford the vacation you just went on. Yeah. And I know they may not be purposely bragging about it, but to not talk about stuff like that. Or, people, there's people on Facebook that will put out posts about their amazing spouse or their amazing children or pregnancies or whatever. And that's okay, of course. But sometimes realizing there's people that are struggling in marriages, they're struggling with pregnancies, they've been trying to have kids and whatever. And I just think in social media, it's another way of not reading the room. We're throwing stuff out there that probably not on purpose, but just realizing, I probably shouldn't post that. Yeah. Because there's all kinds of people that are struggling. So
it's true. That's so good, John. Well, I hope that y'all found this episode engaging and helpful, and we will catch you on the next one.
Thank you for joining us today on the John Harrison Podcast. As you know, we believe that a positive work culture creates a ripple effect that extends into families and communities. If you found anything of value in today's episode, please share it with somebody so they can hear it as well. And if you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please fill out the form below.